The scariest SpongeBob episodes. Halloween season is approaching, and what is a better way to celebrate it than showing you some SpongeBob episodes that will scare every ounce of your body? So prepare yourself, because these are the scariest SpongeBob episodes that you can find on SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 1. SHANGHAIED. The Flying Dutchman is for sure one of the most iconic characters in SpongeBob SquarePants. But do you remember the first time that this ghost made an appearance? Well, let's check it out. In this classic from the second season of the show, both Patrick and SpongeBob start investigating a mysterious anchor that suddenly fell from the sky and ended up crushing SpongeBob's living room. Fearing about what this strange object could be, they showed it to Squidward, thus learning about the legend of the terrifying ghost known as the Flying Dutchman. In typical SpongeBob fashion, he ends up boarding this creepy ghost's ship, and when the captain discovers their intentions, they end up getting caught and afraid of joining this immortal crew for all eternity. Many crazy things happen to our protagonists while serving the Flying Dutchman. For example, after Squidward is thrown into a chaotic dimension for complaining about serving the Dutchman, both SpongeBob and Patrick are warned that their work is useless, so the Dutchman reveals he's going to eat them. After receiving such shocking news, SpongeBob and Patrick then embark on a mission to steal the Dutchman's famous dining sock, which he can't eat without. After fighting over the sock and almost breaking it, the Dutchman decides to grant them 3 wishes in exchange for this appreciated item's safe return. Patrick wishes he knew about this earlier, and the clock is set back 1 minute. SpongeBob quickly wishes that Squidward was with them, and he's brought back. When it's time to decide who gets the last wish, SpongeBob is given the privilege, but not before the others also get their chance. In the end, our heroes came back home pretty safely after this creepy adventure, but not only that, they ended up befriending one of Bikini Bottom's most feared ghosts. In hindsight, this episode ended up being one of the most famous of the show's entire history, and the Flying Dutchman changed from a creepy legendary ghost to an awesome member of this awesome show's cast of amazing characters. Number 2. A Pal for Gary. Jumping from one scary monster to an even scarier one, did you know that SpongeBob tried to adopt a friend for Gary? Well, in case you don't, we present you Puffy Fluffy. We know that SpongeBob is very concerned with his job, right? But we also know that SpongeBob loves his pet snail, Gary. How could he fix that so Gary does not feel lonely when SpongeBob's not at home? Well, in this fantastic adventure from the 7th season of the show, our protagonist found a great solution to that: adopting a new pet so Gary would have a great companion while he's away. The sad thing is that things didn't go as SpongeBob planned, because Puffy turns out to be quite a bully, harassing Gary at any moment when they're alone. Even though Gary is of course innocent and the victim here, SpongeBob still believes that Gary is the troublemaker and not Puffy. In one horrific moment, Puffy ends up turning into a large reptilian monster of sorts and even attempts to eat Gary at one point. SpongeBob finds his house in a mess and still feels all of this might be Gary's undoing out of jealousy from Puffy. Poor Gary, he's SpongeBob's best boy and didn't deserve the blame for all this mess. We selected this episode because the monstrous slug-like appearance of Puffy's final version had everything that a monster should have, from pointy teeth to an alien-like tongue. This is one episode that you should revisit during Halloween season without any doubts. Number 3. Graveyard Shift. Have you ever heard about the cold-blooded assassin known as the hash-slinging slasher? In this episode from the younger days of the show's lifespan, our protagonists had to face the menace of having this killing machine stalking them. Or at least that's what they thought. Let's take a look at this episode together. One night, our protagonists prepare the Krusty Krab for its 8 p.m. closing, which comes none too soon for Squidward. However, right before closing, one customer customer walks up to the door and attempts to make an order. Squidward smugly informs him that they are closed, and the customer prepares to take his money elsewhere. As we know, losing money is never a choice in Mr. Krabs' plans, and seeing that people might even come at night, he decides that now the Krusty Krab will be open the full 24 hours of the day. Poor SpongeBob, he never has a moment to rest. Bored with the night shift, Squidward develops one of his magnificent plans to annoy SpongeBob, and this time he decides to conjure up a spooky tale to creep out SpongeBob. The protagonist of that story was the hash-slinging Slasher, a former fry cook whose clumsiness lost him a hand, which was later replaced with a spatula. He later got run over by a bus and was fired from his job at his funeral, and now he comes to the Krusty Krab every Tuesday to achieve his vengeance. This story lurked throughout the whole night that both SpongeBob and Squidward had to spend at the Krusty Krab, and even if we discover that our assassin was just a normal guy that held a spatula in his hand, this episode had an awesome and creepy atmosphere. Also, this SpongeBob episode might be an homage to the slasher movies from the 80s and 90s, but for sure, it was a really scary one to watch. Number 4, SpongeHenge. Jumping from one homage to another, have you ever seen the movie The Planet of the Apes? Well, if you have, this unsettling episode might ring a bell for you. This episode might not look like a scary one at first, but the atmosphere that it creates is for sure worth mentioning. Everything goes south when a strange storm filled with harsh winds strikes Bikini Bottom. These winds are causing SpongeBob's pores to whistle a tune that attracts jellyfish, leaving SpongeBob without any chance of running away from these cute animals. In the end, SpongeBob is forced to separate himself from society, isolating himself from everyone and living in a cave, becoming a hermit. To ease his solitude, our protagonist creates a stone replica of himself, and sometime after, he decides that this replica will be of great use to distract and trick the jellyfish, so he's free from them. What SpongeBob didn't know is that while he was living in the cave, the Krusty Krab ended up deserted and sank into the ground. After this revelation, SpongeBob realizes how much time the jellyfish made him waste and cries out in despair. Such a sad story. Jumping into the future, we see that a race of strange aliens have appeared in jellyfish fields. SpongeHenge has become a major tourist attraction, with many tourists taking pictures of the site. Again, this might not be the scariest episode ever, but for sure it is a really weird one. Number 5, SquidBob Tentaclepants. Have you imagined what would happen if SpongeBob and Squidward fused themselves together? This might be one of Squidward's worst nightmares, and the writers of the show decided to make that nightmare real in the 4th season of the show. During this episode, Sandy uses a machine that is able to transport things. Sandy shows SpongeBob how it works by teleporting an apple to Mrs. Puff's desk. SpongeBob asks Sandy if it can transport him to the Krusty Krab, so she allows him to try it. In typical SpongeBob fashion, something strange happens, and when he gets there, part of Squidward's arm gets stuck in him, much to everyone's surprise. This led to our protagonists getting fused together, with SpongeBob having his normal head and body, while Squidward's head is sticking out of the upper left. The funny thing is that they are also in control of each other's arms. SpongeBob is controlling Squidward's hand, while Squidward is controlling SpongeBob's. Such a mess they've made. This fusion led to some gross scenarios during the episode, especially in the end of it, because after Squidward's talent fails to amuse audiences, in a fit of rage he ends up fiddling with the machine yet again. This leads to a shot where Squidward has been fused in a ball of flesh with other characters like Sandy and Mr. Krabs. This scene was so gruesome that it even had to be cut from some of the show's reruns. Well, there you have it. These are some scary and creepy SpongeBob episodes that you can see or revisit during this Halloween season. Do you find these episodes scary? Please tell us in the comments and leave a like in the video so we can provide you with even more cool SpongeBob content. Until the next time, goodbye!